Hey, what's up, gentlemen and ladies? Happy birthday to everyone from the US. So, if you've been watching my videos for a while, you probably know that there are several reoccurring topics that I just can't seem to get away from in my videos. And this could be anywhere from talking about how shit Kingdom Hearts Chi is, or how the Final Fantasy VII Remake won't be fully action-based, and of course, the Fabula Nova Crystallis, and more specifically, its connection to Final Fantasy XV. I like to think that what MatPat is to Five Nights at Freddy's, I am to the FNC. I mean, I don't know anyone who has spent as much time reading wiki articles, data log entries, and analect descriptions than I have trying to piece together this entire story. And I have made enough videos about the FNC to warrant a playlist, but I realized earlier that I have not actually made a video talking about the FNC since Final Fantasy XV came out. I've mentioned it in passing, but I don't have a full dedicated video going into all of the ties between it and Final Fantasy XV, having actually played the game, which is why I'm making this video now. But before I get into that, there is a Fabula Nova Crystallis video checklist that I have to go through at the beginning of every video where I talk about it, because I know that if I don't, all the comments will be asking about this. So if you've seen my videos like this in the past, just bear with me for a second. But for those of you that haven't, what the hell is the Fabula Nova Crystallis? They may be a bit old, but I have two entire videos explaining what it is. I will leave the better of the two in the description, go watch it. Next, what the hell happens in the Fabula Nova Crystallis? I made an entire pseudo-animated video simplifying the entire story across all 5 games. Links in the description, go watch it. Next, but Tabata said FF15 was not in the Fabula Nova Crystallis anymore. First of all, shame on you for trusting anything that Tabata said, but secondly, I made an entire video disproving that with hard evidence. Link is in the description, go watch it. And if you're still not convinced, in the Ultimania for FF15, he had a statement where he straight up said that FF15 was still in the FNC along with games like Final Fantasy XIII and Type 0, so there's no denying it now. Now that we got all that shit out of the way, let's talk Fabula Nova Crystallis in Final Fantasy XV, shall we? Firstly, there's some old references to it in many of the Versus assets that were carried over into Final Fantasy XV. A while ago, I made some videos analyzing the Latin lyrics of some of the 15 songs, including the main theme Somnus, which is specifically referencing the FNC. It talks about a god sleeping and wanting to be woken when the flame burns out, which directly parallels God Bunavel's sleeping until the flame of Goddess Etrop, her life, goes out, which once the flame burns, God will wake up and return, which we actually see happen in Lightning Returns after Etrop dies, which begins the end of the world. Speaking of which, that is actually also a major relation to FF15 that I found not too long before the game came out. See, Versus assets and themes that were carried over aside, one of the major aspects of Final Fantasy XV is the Plague of the Stars, or as it was called in the final game, the Star Scourge. In 15, the Star Scourge is their version of Ragnarok, where darkness takes over the land and everything's destroyed and taken over by monsters, which is exactly what happened in the FNC. See, Etrop's role in the Unseen Realm was to watch the balance between the chaos of the world, because an unbalance would cause the destruction of the universe, as chaos would take over and destroy everything in its path. Sound familiar? Not only do we get to see the event take place at the end of 13.2, but we get to see the results of a world like this in 15, giving us a concrete timeline of the games in the series. And Etrop's death having so much meaning in the world of EOS makes so much sense, because back in the Versus days, she did have a major role. She was the one in the logo of the game, for crying out loud. Notice how the lyrics of Somnus, Deus Dormit, God sleeps? It's no coincidence that Etrop is sleeping in the logo. Now, whether this is supposed to be literally sleeping or a metaphor for her death, I'll let you decide. But remember how she was the guardian of the Kingdom of Lucis? In the iconic Stella and Noctis dinner scene, there is a giant Grim Reaper statue holding up a painting of Etrop, because she is essentially the goddess of death. Which, in case you guys are wondering, is actually the reason why they attempted to separate FF15 from the FNC to begin with. See, apparently having Etrop be a key symbol in Lucian culture was seen in some countries in the real world as the equivalent of Reaper worshipping, quote unquote, which would have bumped up Final Fantasy XV's rating and limited the number of people who could have accessed it, so the game ended up basically getting censored. And I mean, you can very clearly tell that these changes were all last minute. I mean, we're supposed to believe that it's Luna in the logo, despite the fact that she had like no screen time in the game. How do you explain the Genesis artwork then, huh? Why does Luna look like such a divine being with a wing and is placed above the actual gods of FF15 when she was nowhere near that powerful in the game? Clearly, this character was supposed to be Etrop and not her. But speaking of the gods in 15, or the Astrals as I'm gonna call them, their role fits perfectly as well. I think that they were originally going to represent the fal'Cie of Final Fantasy XV. Yes, I know, for the longest time I argued that the Lucii guy would be the fal'Cie equivalents in 15, but having actually played Final Fantasy 15, I think that this makes more sense. If you think about it, yes, 13 may have had some original designs for some of the fal'Cie like Orphan and Eden, but they also had some of the classic Final Fantasy summons like Carbuncle. Yeah, remember Carbuncle, the fal'Cie? Bet you forgot about it. So why is it hard to believe that the Astrals were the same? Just like in Final Fantasy 13, these creatures were made to serve the humans, and both the fal'Cie and the humans were created by the same gods, which makes sense if you think about it. Nowhere in 15 does it say that the Astrals created humans, and it seems like some of them are serving the humans not out of love, but out of obligation. I'm looking at you, Titan. I mean, for crying out loud, how many of the Astrals downright hated the humans and tried to kill them? I know some cooperated, like Ramuh and Shiva, but damn, Leviathan, calm down. Do you have to be such a dick, Titan? And don't even get me started on Ifrit. But the most iconic thing about the fal'Cie in Final Fantasy 13 was their ability to enslave humans and turn them into l'Cie. You know, basically take all of the humanity out of them and instead make them super powerful, since they also force them to work for them, even if it was against their will, and if you don't cooperate, then they start turning into these ugly monsters that plague the land and make it an apocalyptic mess that humans are too scared to go into. And are you starting to see the connections here? I know that Ravus was never given the same treatment as Arden by the Astrals, but obviously some story changes were made when they started cutting shit out left and right. Nobody can deny that there was going to be way more to Ravus than when we got in the final game, and the whole idea of humans being the ones that turn into the monsters that you've been fighting all game long, come on, there's no way that's a coincidence. Plus, if you guys recall, the idea of fal'Cie and l'Cie functions slightly differently even between the other two FNC games, 13 and Type 0. In Type 0, it's the crystals that turn people into l'Cie, you know, like the crystal that we see at the end of Final Fantasy 15, shown to us by the one person who shows the most evidence of being a l'Cie in the whole game, right before he tells us all of that evidence for the first time. Oh, and who directed Type 0? Tabata? Wow, what a coincidence. Honestly, as much as some people dislike the FNC for how much it overcomplicated 13 and especially the out-of-nowhere ending of Type 0, on top of how much extra research you need to do independently to understand the whole story, I actually think that in general, it's a good narrative, it just wasn't executed very well. A lot of people want to see what could have been with Versus 13 for many different reasons, but if I'm being honest, this would be my major one, finding out how all of these aspects from the FNC would have played out had they gone all out with the story and not just left small remnants of what could have been. But where's the fun in having the puzzle pieced together for you, right? Be sure to let me know in the comments if you guys have any theories or connections that you could find on 15 to the FNC, and maybe we'll be one step closer to putting together the original story of Versus 13. Either way though, I guess that's all that I have for you guys today. I hope that you guys enjoyed. If you did, be sure to blitz that like button, subscribe, and as always, stay tuned for all things Final Fantasy! See you guys.